When we think about the landlord opportunity, and this is really where I hope everyone will dial in working with investors. And if you're thinking about doing this yourself, we just have to think about what you were doing 5 years ago. And I know that the whole, COVID thing kind of put a black hole in everyone's, memory for the past 5 years. But just think about even the 5 years before that and how fast time goes by. And, when you think about the fact that 5 years from now, the population that's already happened, the shortages of homes, especially in places like Georgia, where our property taxes are very favorable compared to the rest of the country, you have to think about what's going to happen to the prices ultimately, regardless of what happens within the next few years. And so we're going to look at different ways that rental homes can be helpful because a lot of times the only thing that people are looking at when they're purchasing rental homes, as far as their profit is concerned, is they're saying, okay, if I make $500 more than my mortgage a month, so that would be $6,000 a year, 12 times 500. So if you made $6,000, but then you had to like replace an air conditioner, okay? And I know someone said in the chat earlier too about it's a good idea to get a home warranty. Y'all, I think it's always a good idea to get a home warranty for the first year, just so that there's nothing that's shocking or whatever. But and if you're going to flip homes as well, it's a great idea to just go ahead and get one and offer it with the price, because that way if the other agent for the buyer is trying to negotiate, oh, we want to get, even though the air conditioner works, it's not, blowing as cold as we want to, whatever. It's just like, oh, great. Well, there's a home warranty included. The home warranty, for less than $1,000, I think just takes a lot more expensive negotiating off the table, especially as an investor, because you just don't want to deal with having to fix stuff, and as opposed to just taking a big hit on the price. A lot of times the home warranty can be very helpful. But we have to think about home appreciation. And I know, of course, home prices are going down right now, but y'all, we need to think about like the stock market versus home prices. Okay. In the market that we've had over the last 2 years, okay, it's especially last year, where people were paying my stars, 50,000, 100,000, or even more between the difference of the appraised value and the sales price that they offered. I mean, of course, the home prices went up a lot. So of course they're going to come down. It's just like when the stock market, if it has 5 days going up, y'all, it's going to come down. Okay. It's not going to it can't go up for 30 days without coming back down some. So I think we do have to be realistic when we're looking at property appreciation. But I use a number in this class, which is 4% appreciation a year, which I think is extremely reasonable. And the reason I think that is if you look back over time and you see what the property values have appreciated at, if you took like 7 years or a 10-year piece at a time, then it's significantly more than 4. But I like to be conservative just so that we're not over promising and under delivering for investors. But when we say that we could purchase a rental home for $300,000, when we had our last investor roundtable a few weeks ago, I had 3 houses on there that were less than $300,000, and they were all nice houses. One of them had a garage apartment, so it had a house in Gainesville. It had a nice brick house and a garage apartment that tenants were already in, so you could just purchase it, and you would already have tenants in there. And so, when we're thinking about purchasing rental property, if you're not going to move in, which I wish you would, but if you're not going to move 3 times, then, even if you did a 10% down mortgage, even though your rate could be higher, what I like to point out to people, does it really matter what the rate is, or does it matter what your return on investment is? Because when I went into purchasing rental homes in the 90s, y'all, I was paying 15, 16% for rental property and having to put 30% down. I remember when when it went down to 10%. Y'all, I bought 2 houses that week because I thought, oh my gosh, this program is just not even going to stay this way in the date. So now that 10% down for investment property, even though the interest rate could be higher, I just want you to consider all of this that we're going to look at. I call it the 360 view of the benefits of investing. And this is what I want you to be able to talk to your investors about. The time value of appreciation, when you think about 5 years later at 4% appreciation, your rental property that was 300,000 would be worth 360,000. 10 years later, of course, it is now worth 420,000. And so when you're thinking about, I don't want to be a landlord, I would ask you not to think about being a landlord. I would say focus on these numbers. Because depending on how old you are, 20 years, that's not very long. I mean, if you're 30, 40 years old, I mean, you're still only 50 or 60 if you did hold it for the whole 20 years. And, unlike the stock market or other investments that we could put our money into, we actually own something. We own something. So it's not going to just be a bad corporate decision, or like today when the Fed raises the rates, the companies that borrow money, their stock is going to plummet. But none of that is the case. I mean, you own an appreciating asset and someone else is paying it off for you. And so that's a great thing to focus on. So now let's look at 3 rental properties, which is what I would just encourage everyone to have. Is if you had 3 rental properties at 5 years and you're still doing the same $300,000 example, then, same scenario, but now it's $180,000 in 5 years. And let's just say this. Let's say that if you had 3 rental properties, okay, and they all 3 turnkeyed in the same year. Okay, number one, that stinks and it barely ever happens. Okay, because a lot of tenants stay in for a very long time. And so, but even if they did, if you spent 20 hours turnkeying, and when I say 20 hours, you might say, well, that's a really long time, but I'm talking about for the full year. For the full year that you spent 20 hours per house, or one house took 60 hours. I mean, regardless, let's just think about 60 hours, which is, 40 hours is a regular work week plus 20. So if you were to say, or you could just pull a few 10-hour days and knock it out, which is what I do. But here's the thing though, that's $1,000 an hour. And I mean, I don't know. I know that, like the person said earlier, that something like Airbnb and short-term rentals, that can be a full-time job, because you've got, there's just a constant coming in and out, in and out. I'm talking about just a regular rental property. Y'all, the tenants don't even want you there. They don't want you to call, I mean, the only time they hear from me if they paid their rental time is when I'm sending them a ham at Christmas time, because I just want to say thank you. But just remember the stages of life, whether you sell it later or you continue renting it, or like we talked about briefly earlier, the 1031 tax-free exchange. The supply and demand, I like to talk about this because, there were a few questions in the chat about, hey, is this a good time to buy? Because we do know that home prices are going to go down. Of course, they're going to go down. Okay. But what we have to think about too is right now is a really good tenant market, because y'all, I mean, goodness, you just wouldn't believe. I have a lot of friends and acquaintances that live in apartments. Y'all, I don't even know how people are living right now. Like if like when people graduate from college and they have their first intro job, I guess maybe people just have like 2 or 3 or 4 roommates, but I mean, it's very expensive to rent. And so that's great for us as landlords. And so we can put off buying the house, but just remember, once houses get really cheap, then a lot of investors are going to be buying it. And now all of a sudden the supply of rental houses is not going to be as low as it is right now. So, you just always have to think about it. We're never going to buy at the very bottom and then sell at the very top. I mean, we can get lucky sometimes and maybe hit one of those, the very top or the very bottom, but very rarely are we going to hit it, just because that's like picking a lottery number. So, these are things to think about. You know, the factors leading to choosing your property. We're really going to dig a little deeper into that. We're going to go way deep in the next class, which is the landlord class, I call it, but it's called Teaching New Investors How to Get Started. Because y'all, I just always like to rent a house to people that I would live in. It, like, if the ceiling fan's making a noise, then replace it. Okay. You know, if the blinds are nasty, don't get expensive blinds. Just get new blinds. They're not even that expensive. And people would rather have new blinds that are not expensive than dirty blinds because you paid too much for them. And now you just want to try to wash, take them off and hose them off and put them back up. It's just, we can make things feel new with paint. I mean, paint is always our friend. And when tenants are calling us on the phone, and they're inquiring about a property, and I will say rent.com. And do you know the thing on FMLS? Y'all, the new thing on FMLS, do you know it, Dana?
Rent spree.
Rent spree. Yeah. So y'all, rent spree, I love it so much because it runs their credit report. I mean, so they pay it, online, because we really, y'all, as landlords and just as humans, we really do not want other people's social security numbers and all of that, like, being electronically, transferred to us through an email or anything else, just because that's just a lot of responsibility. And if the person ever has identity fraud or anything like that, the fact that we don't have to pull credit reports. If you are going to do this full time and you decide you are going to start pulling credit reports, you can Google landlord credit report. Landlord credit report. That's what it's called. And they will have you fill out an application with your own social, just because if you're going to be processing people's credit, then you're going to have to, like, sign up with an account and all of that. Okay, so these are good decisions. So the reason that I was showing these pictures in here is because look at the difference between investor B as a landlord and investor A. What the choices were and how much we spent on fixing the house up. And so, it's like, what can a landlord do with $800? This is a house that I lived in down the street from Peachtree Hills. And it had, y'all, on the other side of this, there was a hole that you could see the bottom of the, like the dirt on the bottom of the house, because there was a leak and it had gone through the subflooring. But it didn't bother me because, you know what? I put new subflooring in and I tiled right over it. So it's really, it's not hard to do. But do you notice how all I'm doing is painting? Like, I painted the cabinets. Okay, and I do want to talk about this as far as the top of this cabinet. Okay, are y'all aware of this? Does everyone know how you can make a porous surface so that you can tile on top of Formica? Okay, so what you do is you get mastic. Okay, so remember, mortar is what you put on the floor when you're going to tile. You use mastic when you're going to tile the walls or a counter. And it's just lighter than mortar, which is really thick. And so anyway, if you take the comb, you'll see it when you buy the mastic. It comes in a little container, like a little tub. And so the comb just has teeth in it, and so what you do is you pull all of it, you go right on top of this, look, right on top of this Formica and the back of it. Just comb the mastic on and put it all in one direction, like vertical, and then leave it on there overnight. You have to leave it at least 24 hours. And then the next day, come back after 24 hours and do the mastic with that same little plastic comb the other way. So if you did it vertical, then go horizontal. And what you just did is create a porous surface that you can tile right on top of, so that the only thing I took out was that sink. I left everything on here except just that. And so, for $800, that's not too bad to be able to redo a bathroom, but that's the way that I redo a bathroom when I'm renting a house, because, we just don't want to put in all the new cabinets and all of that stuff when we are planning on renting someplace for 10 years. So investor B, the depreciation. So this is where I just want to ask everyone, if you want to grab some coffee, then do that, because we have to dial in and there are going to be numbers on here, but it is totally worth it to be able to explain this. Okay. This is totally worth it. So the word of the day is depreciation. So whether you are doing this for yourself or you're doing it for an investor client, they can be W-2s, they can be 1099. There is a requirement from the IRS that you spend a minimal amount of hours doing real estate, every year. But it doesn't mean that you can't have a W-2 job, and do real estate. And so that's just something that they can ask their accountant. But if you had 3 or 4 houses, it would be very easy to show that you were spending that 60 hours or whatever their limit, their minimum would be, to be able to write it off. We, as real estate licensees, we always get to write it off if you have a real estate license. So you know what? That's almost worth it for investors to get their real estate license, just to confirm the depreciation. But so let's look at the way that this works. And just remember, so what we've talked about so far for the appreciation for the rental homes is 4% a year. What we're going to talk about now is depreciation. So this is in addition to the 4% a year. So we're going to stick with the same $300,000 sales price. And this is only good for rental homes. Okay. Yeah. I mean, you can do it with commercial, but it's a different, it's a different amount of time that you write it off, but I just want to stick with residential today for rental homes. So if it is a standard house, that's $300,000, a quarter acre lot, half an acre, 1 acre, the standard number that the IRS uses is 80%, that the structure is 80%, because we cannot depreciate the land. We can only depreciate the house. So let's say that the sales price is 300,000. The normal number for the algorithm is 80%. So 300 times 80% is $240,000. $240,000 is divided by 27 and a half years. Y'all write down 27 and a half. That number does not change. It does not change. That is an assigned number by the IRS. It is 27 and a half years that they depreciate residential rental property, income producing residential rental property. So the 240 divided by the 27 and a half is $8,727. When we see that number, we just go, okay, I don't know what that 8727 is, but I like the sound of it. I mean, it's $8,000, because do y'all notice what we're not discussing in this depreciation? What we are not looking at in this depreciation is if there is a loan on the property or not. Do you know why we're not looking at it? Because it doesn't matter. You get to write this off whether there is a mortgage on the property or not. If there is a mortgage on the property, then that means you also get to write off the mortgage interest that you paid. This is its own benefit by itself. It does not depend on anything else. Okay. So y'all, I'm about to freak you out. I mean, I'm just going to say, just start getting excited. Okay. Okay. So the 8727 is what I get to write off of my taxes. So we're going to use $100,000 of income after you have already written off your expenses. So whether that's you and your spouse, just you with real estate income, just you with W-2, it does not matter what it is. We're just going to use $100,000 because it's easy when we're doing math. Okay. So the 8727, if you've written off everything you can, your kids, your mortgage interest, you've written off everything you can, and your net income right now is $100,000 that you're going to pay taxes on. That's where we are in this example. you would get to write off that $8,727 as if it was mortgage interest, as if it was a child deduction. I mean, it is a deduction and it comes right off of your income. So basically what that means is the actual cash in our hand from writing that off depends on your tax bracket. I use 30% as just an example, which would be $2,618.10 that would actually be in your hand. So if you had already paid in advance taxes for that $100,000, it means that you would be getting a check back from the IRS for 2618. Or if you had not paid enough and you did owe the IRS 20,000, now you would owe them 20,000 minus that amount because you got to write off that 8727. Does that make sense? I know it's a lot of numbers and I did it a lot of different ways to try to make it easy to explain, because what you're about to see on this next slide is really, look, y'all, today it's everybody's birthday. Okay. Happy birthday. Okay. Because that's what this information is. Okay. If you have 3 rentals that are $300,000, then that would actually mean that your net gain when you are either paying your taxes, that you would pay $7,854 less, or if you had already prepaid your taxes, like you were a W-2 employee and they, that it's taken out, then you're getting this money back from the IRS. I'm just telling you that if you can talk about this to investors, because regular people are not just looking up depreciation on the IRS website. This is real estate investing. This is what we do. This is not cheating. It has a whole IRS code, which you're going to see in a minute, so that it's very easy to talk about. But when you look at, y'all, I love numbers so much. Okay, so the $7,854, we're just carrying that forward, okay, because that's the actual cash in your hand that it would make the difference if you're at a 30% tax bracket. That means that you could lose $2,618 per rental and you would still break even. So does that make sense? So even if you didn't have any rental overage, or if you're like, let's say that your mortgage, oh, I've got a good suggestion. Okay, so didn't everybody's property taxes go up this year? Well, guess what? If you had a rental home, those property taxes would have gone up too. So it would have changed your mortgage payment. So let's say that you were cash flowing, you did have overage of $100 a month, but now, it went up by $2,400. And so now you were actually losing $100 a month, which would mean that if your property taxes went up. And so that would mean that you would be losing $1,200 a year, $100 a month times 12 months. However, if you were to now add it with depreciation, y'all, you would still be at $1,400. So, my point is that if we're not sharing the depreciation with people, then they don't understand that there is a safety net in, even when you do have to do an air conditioner repair, and y'all, you still get to write the air conditioner repair off. It's not like you're not writing it off. This depreciation is a standalone benefit that it is not contingent on anything except that there's a structure on that property and it's not just land. And so we'll bring all of that around. But if you're thinking to yourself, well, what if the prices go down and all these investors start buying houses, and then there's going to be a lot more houses than there are tenants? Well, we're going to circle back to the fact that the population has already happened, and the per person household number, families have fewer or no children, baby boomers are empty nesters, but the land costs and development has also gone up significantly. And so now, I put this website on just so you can look at it at your convenience, but it's a great thing to be able to send to your investors as well. census.gov. And if you pull it up to the page, because y'all, you can show your investors, this is, I mean, this came just straight from this, in October of last year, is now a good time to invest. This is how fast this, and look, one international migrant every 670 seconds, which of course has gone up significantly. And so, but the point is everyone needs to have, I mean, everyone has to have a place to live. And so when we look at the census.gov, and the reason I put this long one on here is because these are some of my favorite charts in there. And so you can pull any county that you want to. I just pulled these because I'm more familiar with them. But when you're looking at, north, south, east, west in Atlanta, and you see what's happening, y'all, you can even see, the demographics. But what I love about it though is look at the age. Okay, you can also see the age of the people. So what we have to remember, okay, is when we can look this up by age, and if you go to census.gov, you won't even believe it, y'all. I mean, there's definitely over 100, but I mean, all of these reports that you can break down. And so if you're going to suggest to someone, like I can tell you some great cities that I like to invest in. One is definitely Cherokee County because of the taxes. I think I'm about to buy something in Ball Ground because I just, I like the taxes in places that are further out. Gwinnett was hit really hard last time by the recession. And so one thing that we can look at is we can also look and see how many houses are about to go into foreclosure, like how many are late on mortgages. And that can also help us not only reach out to people, because y'all, a lot of people need to sell their house right now. Okay. They need to sell their house because they haven't paid a mortgage payment. And the thing is, they can still make more than their house could sell for. It's just that, a lot of folks are working the program, when there was a moratorium on foreclosures, and banks, because of the inflation and interest rates, don't want to officially put the house in foreclosure because it hurts their books and how they report to shareholders. And so there's a lot of reasons that we should be reaching out to people right now. But what all of the census.gov shows, just dive into Georgia, pick your county, pick your city, look at the ages, look at the immigration to Georgia from New York, to Georgia from California. Y'all, all of this is public data. So there's so much information that we can get our nerd on and really show investors that we are worth 3%, for our side, for what we're doing, because we're really doing the homework for them and helping them avoid making mistakes